Hey, wait, is this thing on? Oh, it is. Hey guys, this is, Editor Agent here, and I just wanted to inform you that we have a new goal, and the new goal is 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year. Yeah, I know, it's a big goal from where we're at right now, but I believe in you. And, you, the viewer, yeah, you. If you look down slightly, yeah, keep looking, more. You see that? Yeah, that's the subscribe button. If you press it, you'll get notified about my videos and content. And every time I post, you will know about it. So yeah. And if you press the like button, you will show even more people about this spectacular content that you so love and enjoy. And also, just a random fact on the screen. There's just, new content that's going to come out when we reach 1,000 subscribers. I'm totally not spoiling anything, of course. But yeah, you know, editor editor agent, I guess, is probably writing some stuff on the screen. If he is, make sure you don't pay attention to it. Yeah, don't worry about it. I am not a sellout, by the way, so yeah, don't worry about what it says on the screen. Just completely ignore that. But yeah, I've wasted your time for enough. I've wasted your time enough. Unless you didn't do it. If you didn't do it, I'll wait. No, but like seriously, do it. Okay, so you probably did it by now. Back to your regularly scheduled program. First of all, I'd like to apologize for how this may look on, depending on your screen and depending what you're watching it on. It was just a little, it was a little long, so yeah. But anyway, this is the video. This is what if Deku was the son of Fatgum, and yes, that shield and spear will make sense in a minute. So just give me a second to explain. But without any further ado, let's get into this video. Our video starts off with Izuku basically not even existing yet. We start off with Fatgum on a patrol, right? Fatgum was on a patrol when he saw this woman getting mugged by this villain. After this mugging was taking place, Fatgum walked over there and told the villain that, or not even a villain, just a thug really, to stop doing that because it was against the law and that he was going to have to take him in. The villain tried to run, I'm just going to call him a villain because that's what I want to call him, so I'm just going to call him that. A villain tried to run away. Fatgum literally ran over towards him, jumped on top of him, and basically belly flopped on him, right? So, like, he basically got absorbed in the Fatgum's stomach, right? After he finished basically eating that person, he turned over to see Inko, and Inko was quite scared of Fatgum considering his height. He's really tall. Like, I'm pretty sure he's like 8 feet tall and like probably hundreds of pounds. So yeah, he was very threatening. And she was kind of scared of him and didn't really want to like associate with him in any capacity or form. So she was just trying to walk away, and he was trying to make sure she was okay, but she really wasn't having it. So Fatgum just decided to use his assault form, and that shrunk him back down to normal size. And she basically like calmed down a bit because now he's just average height. Well, not average height. He's a little bit above average, but you get the point. Anyway, he then tells her, asks her if she's okay. She says yes. He says, like, do you need to go anywhere or call anyone? She says, no, I'm okay. Long story short, after this encounter, Fatgum comes over to check on her like multiple times. This is after she was like, she never got with Hisashi in the store, so yeah. So he would come over to check on her, and they kind of started a friendship, right? Then, long story short, that became a relationship, and eventually, what led to Izuku. Izuku's hair will still be green because. So yeah. Anyway, after Izuku was born, right, Fatgum was astounded. He was, basically hysterical. He loved his son, right? But he was a hero, so he couldn't always be there, and he had to go out on patrol most of the time. That's how Izuku's life was, just really having one parent in the home. And yeah, Fatgum would patrol all day and all night, right? So this put a strain on Inko's schedule because she had to watch Izuku. So she basically ended up quitting her job because fatgum made enough to support them and give them more than a comfortable life. So yeah. And Izuku was pretty happy nonetheless. And then one day, when Izuku turned 4 years old, because he was actually homeschooled until this day, when Izuku was turned 4 years old, he asked his mother if he could go to the Quirk doctor. She said, after you finish with your schoolwork. Izuku ran back to his room and started doing his schoolwork, and he was basically doing, he was 4 years old, but he was already doing advanced math, well, at least advanced for his age, which would be multiplication and division. So, like, but massive problems though, right? Izuku was basically somewhat of a genius. Not really, but yeah, he was basically a genius. He finished them, and he went down to Inko and asked her if he could go. Then she said, let me check. She went over there, and she checked, and to her astoundment, it was correct. And Izuku said, can we go now, Mom? And she says, okay, honey, we're going. Put your clothes on, get ready, and then we'll leave in like 5 minutes or whatever. Izuku throws some clothes on, goes with his mom, holding her hand, goes to the car, which of course, like, she drives. She hops in the car. Izuku hops in the back seat in his little, like, I guess kid seat. I forget what it's called, but yeah. Anyway, they drive to the Quirk doctor. After they finish driving to the Quirk doctor, they arrive. When the Quirk doctor examines Izuku for the first time, he doesn't notice anything out of the ordinary, right? Like, he's just like, okay, well, he's a normal child. And Izuku basically is told to sit on the table, right? Like the counter. And the doctor then explains that he's going to check his reflexes to see if anything's changed with his physical biology, right? Izuku understood, nodded, with a big smile on his face. The doctor got a little hammer and tapped his knee. But when he tapped his knee, the hammer broke, right? Like, the entirety of the hammer just broke. And Izuku he didn't even notice, right? Like, he was just still smiling, looking up. And the doctor looked up at Izuku, but Izuku wasn't looking at the doctor. So the doctor then touched Izuku, like, pinching him, and his hand felt like it was grabbing steel. And it actually hurt for him to even try to grab it. But Izuku still didn't notice. So the doctor then stood up and told the other doctors what he had just discovered. And they tested it a bit more, like with grabbing Izuku and trying to, pinch him and flick him and stuff. And they basically came to a conclusion. So then they left out of the room and they grabbed a doctor who had super strength. And this doctor basically was instructed to punch Izuku. Now, this might seem like it's extreme, but they did various amounts of testing, so they do know what it is. They're just trying to confirm a theory. So, the doctor is told to punch Izuku with, like, 10% strength. Not really full strength, just 10%, which is enough to basically send the person flying and maybe damage them, like, a bit, right? So, Izuku is told to pay attention. Izuku's looking at the doctor, and with a smile on his face, in, like, sort of a fighting position. And the doctor punches Izuku in the face. But when he punches Izuku in the face, he immediately gets, like, such backlash that his hands start to hurt, and he can't even do anything, right? Like, his arm basically broke. And Izuku, thinking that this was like a sparring match, punches the guy back and sends him out of like the entire office. Like, he sends the doctor through the wall and out onto the street, which surprises everybody because Izuku is 4 years old, right? So Izuku asks if that was supposed to happen. The doctors tell him to stop the test, and they go grab the other doctor. The other doctor has super durability along with his super strength, but he was really badly hurt. Like, it wasn't even a physical thing, it was just a mental thing, right? Izuku could apparently punch somebody through their defenses, and it didn't matter what those defenses were. So the doctors immediately went to the assumption that his quirk worked like this, and they gave it a name. The name of the quirk was Unstoppable Force, Immovable Object. It's a little on the nose, but anyway, Izuku was taken back to his house with his mother, where his father learned about, like, this incident, basically. And he went to Izuku, and he told Izuku that he was going to train him in how to use his quirk. Inko wasn't really objecting. She just didn't want either of them to get hurt, but it was kind of needed. It was a necessity. So Izuku basically was taught by his father. And because I'm taking all day, we'll just skip part of this till when Izuku was 10 years old. At 10 years old, Izuku knows how to use his quirk to such a good extent that he can do things like shrug off full-on assault form punches from his father, right? Like, Izuku's quirk basically allows him to become durable enough to survive any attack that comes his way and strong enough to completely decimate anybody who's punching at him, right? Like, so it scales off of his opponent. So his father did a fully charged assault attack, punched Izuku in the stomach. Izuku didn't even flinch or move. Izuku punched him with the slightest flick and sent him flying through to a wall. His father was pretty okay after this. I mean, he's pretty durable and has a pretty good pain tolerance, so he got up after this, but it definitely hurt, right? There was very bad bruising all over his face. Izuku's power was like strong, and even if the person had the best defenses, it would move through his defense. Like, as soon as his punch makes contact, it essentially makes your body and essentially hurt itself, right? Like, so imagine that someone tries to punch you, you dodge it, right? Like you have a shield and you put the shield up. Well, the energy still travels through the shield into your arm into wherever he was trying to hit you, and then your body replicates the pain it would have felt if he had actually hit you, even though he didn't hit you, right? Like, so it doesn't need to actually have physical contact in order to hurt somebody. So Izuku, with this ability, is told to go easy on his old man by fatgum because he was really, really, really strong. Then we skip 5 more years. Izuku basically just wanted to go to UA and become a hero now because there was really not much else he could do. I mean, his quirk really was quite simple and didn't really give him much leeway, so it kind of had to work in the way that it worked. So that applies to basically anything, right? So yeah. Izuku went to the UA, took the UA test. And after he took the UA test, he was informed that in 10 months he was going to come to the school to do, the test. We basically time skipped that 10 months. The only really important thing that we figure out is that Izuku learns that his quirk is so simple that it can't decipher from what's real and what's fake. So because of that, it will just give Izuku the strength to defeat any opponent that he thinks of, whether it's imaginary or not, because of the fact that his power wants to be safe. So just to be safe, it'll give him the power anyway, even if that threat really isn't there, because his quirk is quite simple. It can't decipher between whether what's real and what's not. So just to be safe, it gives him the power. Izuku knows this and basically becomes unstoppable, but he isn't arrogant like everyone else. As soon as Izuku walks in, everyone kind of looks at him with a strange little look, like, because he's not really, jacked or anything, but he's pretty in shape, and he also has a scar on his arm, like you see in the photo. That scar was from the first time Izuku used his quirk. He basically hurt himself. That was from the punch towards the doctor, all the way back then. And the reason I didn't mention it is because I wanted to bring it up specifically here. But anyway, after everyone looking at this, because Izuku's wearing a sleeveless shirt, everyone kind of is shocked at this. Izuku sits down in the back, and everyone starts moving away from him. Izuku breathes a sigh, and then continues to do his test. After about 10 minutes of the test, Izuku finishes putting his pen down and just sits there and begins to take a nap. The teacher responds with, "Do you think this is a game? Are you really trying to be in UA? Are you really trying to become the best hero you can be?" And Izuku says, "I'm already done." And everyone else just turns back to look at him and says, "Wow, you're already done?" And everyone starts thinking, there's no way he's actually got the correct answers, though. He finished way too fast. Izuku then decides that, this is bothering him. So he basically just gets up and walks out. The teacher informs him that if he doesn't, and Izuku then just hands him his paper and says, "Look at it. If I'm wrong, then you can just send me out and I won't come back. But if I'm right, then just leave me alone. The teacher looks over it with a few glances and notices that all of the answers are correct. Izuku then says, right, so, I'm gonna go. Izuku walks out. Everyone takes notice of this, especially Bakugo and Todoroki, who had already themselves finished their tests, but they just were checking over it a lot more than Izuku did. Izuku just basically wanders around the school for a bit until it's time for the next tests. We basically skip all of the other tests because Izuku does have super speed and super strength equivalent to his opponent, like, because it basically makes Izuku a match for anybody. So yeah, he just thinks of All Might whenever he needs to be super strong, super durable, and super fast. He just pictures that he's fighting All Might, and his quirk gives him the power to compensate for it. So yeah, Izuku wins by a landslide because All Might would win by a landslide. And Izuku goes to the practical exam, and Fatgum is actually there because of the fact that it's his son. And everyone else is kind of shocked because Izuku has like such great speed and such great strength, and even the students and the teachers are thinking that this is All Might's kid or something. But this all gets squashed when basically Fatgum tells them that it's actually his son. And then they say, but he looks nothing like you. And he says, yeah, but he is my son. Izuku basically begins the test in a runner's position, and then President Mike says go. Izuku runs off, dashing past everyone, and just starts sending gusts of air, destroying the robots before he even touches them. Izuku then charges up a punch and sends it down the street, right? Like all of the wind pressure, knocking all of the robots off the street in the opposite directions, and gets multiple points when they hit the ground, right? At the same time. After Izuku's finished, he basically moves his arm in a circular motion, cracks his neck, sits back down at the starting line, crossing his legs, and then begins to just sit and watch everyone else. The teachers release more robots in that same session, and after that, everyone is done up, and everyone who's in Class 1A is in Class 1A. After this, the teachers, specifically All Might, comes out to go look at Izuku, and he asks Izuku if Izuku's quirk was to do all of those things he did. Izuku said, for the most part, yes. And All Might then was kind of shocked because from what All Might could tell, he was basically using around 50% of All Might's power. And that was just a scary thought for All Might to have, because All Might can tell, like, he was like, he's going as fast as I'm going, he's at 50%. Izuku then basically just says, if what you were wondering was I was moving as fast as you, yes I was. Now All Might is kind of shocked in the face, but he doesn't actually let anybody know about it, and nobody actually hears their conversation. Izuku is then offered all for one, one for all. My bad. Izuku then says he'll think about it, and he begins to walk away. All Might then says, I need to make sure this boy stays on the hero course. If he gets to him, it'll be too late. And Izuku basically leaves for the day, walking out with his dad, leaving the gate. Izuku is then informed by his father that he thinks that he did well. Izuku then says, thanks, Dad. And then that's the end of their conversation. Izuku gets in the car with Fatgum, and they go home. Izuku wakes up the next day, getting ready for his first day of school, and he basically dashes out of the house pretty much. He's already in his clothes and everything. He has everything he needs. He just dashes out of the house. Izuku then's making his way down the street because he actually walks to school. He does it as an exercise and stuff. And since his stamina is so vastly superior to a normal human, he doesn't actually need to stop. He doesn't even break a sweat. So Izuku arrives at the gates and walks through the gates and then takes a deep breath. Says, that's the number one school for being a hero smell. Didn't smell like what I thought it smelled like. But that's not important. And Izuku begins walking up the stairs, and he starts noticing everyone else look at him. And Izuku wonders why that is, but doesn't really pay much attention to it. He walks through the door and begins to go to class. He sees the Class 1A door and just is like, wow, this door is absolutely huge, even bigger than Dad when he's in his fat form. That's ridiculous. I wonder what type of monsters are in this class. Hope they're not anybody too strong. Maybe they'd actually give me a challenge. And Izuku opens the door and peers in slowly to see absolute chaos basically erupting. Everyone's talking and everyone's having conversation. Izuku takes a deep releasing breath and says, "Whew, at least it's not what I thought it was." He then goes to look for a seat, and Izuku sees the seat open. He goes to sit by the seat, but then is basically stopped by Bakugo. Bakugo walks over to him. Well, is in front of his face basically. He gets in front of Izuku's face, and he says, "What do you think you're doing?" And Izuku says, "I was going to sit in the seat." And Bakugo then says, "Okay, what do you think you're doing trying to sit in my seat?" Izuku says, "Oh, this was your seat? My bad. I didn't know. I'll find another seat." And Bakugo says, "Yeah, you do that." Izuku walks over to another seat, and Bakugo then says, "What are you doing?" And Izuku says, "Let me guess, this is your seat too?" And Bakugo says, "Huh, you catch on fast." Izuku then says, "I don't have time for you and your games," walks past Bakugo, sits back in the original seat, and Bakugo's kind of boiling. And he goes over to Izuku to start something, but Aizawa then stands up and says, "Everyone, to your seats now." And in a split second, everyone's in their seats and quiet, in an orderly fashion. He says, at least these kids know how to listen. "Anyway, today will be your first test of going to UA. I want you all to get prepared, get in your gym uniforms, go and change, meet me outside in 5 minutes. We're doing a Quirk assessment test." Before anybody could say anything, he was already out the door and closed it. And everyone says, "Wow, that was pretty quick." Everyone gets up, walking away. Everyone kind of eyeing Izuku because of the fact that they pretty much know how Bakugo acts, and the fact that Izuku wasn't scared of Bakugo they kind of sensed that this was going to be like a thing, like him and Bakugo were going to have issues, and that was going to mean they were going to have issues, so they were kind of sighing. Izuku changed. Everyone saw the scar on his arm, and Kirishima actually was the first to go over there and say, "Wow, that is a manly scar." And Izuku says, "It's really not. I didn't even do anything to get it. It wasn't even inflicted upon me by an enemy." And then Kirishima says, "Wait, what? How did you get a scar without fighting someone? Did you fall or something or get burned?" Izuku then says, "No. When I was 4 years old, I used my quirk for the first time on someone who has super strength. And I punched this person so hard that the ripple of power went in that person's arm, broke his arm, and traveled back into mine. It hurt me back, but less, a lot less. I didn't even feel it. I didn't even notice until a couple days later." Izuku then basically stunned everyone with this story, and Bakugo slams his locker really hard and walks out of the door. Kirishima then says, "Wow, are you super powerful and stuff? What kind of quirk do you have?" Izuku says, "I'm not really interested in answering questions. It's okay though. Like I won't answer any questions right now because I don't feel like it. So let's just focus on the test for now." Kirishima is kind of disappointed with this answer, but continues to move on. Izuku then meets everyone outside and gets in the front of the line. And Aizawa then says, "What do you think you're doing, Izuku?" And Izuku then says, "Weren't we going from who got the highest score on the practical exam?" And Aizawa says, "This kid catches on quick, maybe too quick. Let me see if I can mess him up. I don't want any cocky kids in my class." He says, "No, you're going last, Izuku." And Izuku then says, "Okay," and walks back to back. Aizawa then says, "Izuku, come back to the front." Izuku says, "You're being really confusing right now." And Aizawa thinks to himself, so the kid isn't cocky. He was just stating facts. An analyst type character. Interesting. But not a bad thing. He says, "Okay, Izuku, what's your highest scores in physical exams?" Izuku then says slightly above average. And he says, "Did you use these exams with the quirk?" Izuku said, "Of course not. You can't." And he says, "Well, you're going to use your quirk now. That goes for everybody else too." Izuku then says, "Okay." On the running test, Izuku dusts everybody, literally. He makes a very giant dust cloud. In the grip test, he breaks the machine. In the jumping test, he literally jumps high enough to almost not run out of oxygen, but he jumps high enough to where he can't see the others on the ground. So they just assume that if he had jumped correctly in the correct angle, he would have vastly surpassed who he was up against, which is a safe assumption. Aizawa then tests him on the ball throw. Izuku throws the ball as hard as he possibly can, and it actually speeds up multiple times due to it going downwards and gaining more speed, and it actually ends up hitting a mountain far away. Izuku then says, "Did I do good enough, or was that not enough?" And then Aizawa asks an important question, saying, "Was that your full power?" Izuku then says, "Yeah, it was," and he says, "Well, that's good enough." And that's it for Izuku's exam, really, and we don't really need to go over anybody else's exam. Bakugo and Todoroki finish their exams consecutively, and then Bakugo goes over to Izuku along with Todoroki. Todoroki and Bakugo not getting along because they both each think that the other is following them. Izuku sitting down, kind of relaxing. Bakugo steps up to where Izuku is and shakes the entirety of the bleachers. Now Aizawa sees this, but he says, "I want to see how this kid responds." Izuku is then confronted with Bakugo, and Bakugo is in his face again, and he says, "Who do you think you are?" And Izuku says, "I don't think I'm anybody." And as Bakugo then says, "I hate cocky people like you. I bet you were born with a silver spoon in your mouth, huh?" Izuku then says, "I guess you could say I was, but I'm not cocky." Bakugo then says, "Everyone who's born with a silver spoon in their mouth is cocky. That's literally their God-given talent." Izuku then says, "Well, I don't know what type of people you've been seeing, but that ain't me." And then Bakugo turns around seeing Todoroki and says, "Perfect example, that idiot over there." Actually, this actually makes Todoroki turn his face up a bit, and he says, "What did you say to me, you freak?" Bakugo then says, "I called you an idiot. What are you going to do about it? Nothing. You're going to run over to your dad, the number 2 hero. Yeah, I bet you use that card every time you go anywhere so that you can do anything, huh?" Todoroki then recalls some very bad memories, puts out the fire and walks away. Bakugo begins to start laughing at how easy he gave up. Izuku then tells Bakugo that he shouldn't go around doing that to people. Bakugo then says, "I don't remember asking you for your opinion," and Izuku then gives him some humble pie by pushing him off the bleachers and making him fall on his back. Afterwards, Izuku jumps down almost on top of Bakugo, standing right ahead of him, and then he grabs Bakugo by the shirt, lifting him off the ground, and he says, "I don't know what's your problem, but you need to figure it out, and figure it out soon. Nobody here did you anything, and if you're gonna act this way, you can just leave." And he drops him to the ground. Bakugo then starts instantly thinking, "How did he do that before I reacted? How fast is he?" And Izuku begins to walk away with his hands in his pocket, and everyone looks at him. But with that, I think I'm going to end this episode. If you guys enjoyed this first episode, or maybe only solo series if you guys don't want it to be a series, anyway, of What If Deku Was the Son of Fatgum, then you know what to do. Subscribe, like, comment, and I'll give you a part 2. Just let me know in order to get done. Peace.